Hi everyone, Dana back of Dana's Game Reviews. I realize it's been 3 weeks since my last video. I've just been super duper busy this summer. I'm hoping that I will be less busy come fall and be doing more videos. So today I wanted to talk about something that I've been wanting to talk about for several months now. The topic that has been covered ad nauseum by many other people, but I wanted to talk about it myself. So the topic is Disney cheapening Star Wars? So I'm a big fan of the original Star Wars trilogy. It's one of my favorite film franchises of all time. And I'm not a super duper big fan of the prequel movies, although I sort of like parts of Revenge of the Sith, I guess, kind of, but that's sort of beside the point. So ever since Disney bought out Star Wars, they've sort of been sort of trying to, I feel like they're sort of trying to copy to some extent what they did with the Marvel universe. And the big issue with that is what works for something like Marvel doesn't really work for something like Star Wars. Like, Star Wars is, you know, it's sort of, it's a saga, it's a space opera, whereas like Marvel is sort of like an ongoing, continuous storyline. And it feels like sort of trying to turn Star Wars into that. One of the things that I loved about the original trilogy was that it perfectly followed the hero's journey. It had Luke Skywalker as a young, naive farm boy who becomes a hero for a rebel alliance, who then goes through a very dark turn when he finds out the truth of his lineage, and then has to overcome that and find the good in his father and ultimately prevail against the Empire, with his father finally turning back to the light and bringing balance to the Force at last. And it had the perfect sort of beginning, middle, and end structure. And to some extent, I feel like the new movies kind of ruined that. The Force Awakens, I thought, was a fun movie. I thought it was sort of a fun, sort of nostalgic romp down memory lane of sorts. It was essentially A New Hope with a different coat of paint, but I was okay with that at the time. In The Last Jedi, you know, I did 2 reviews of that movie, and at the time I did enjoy it, and I could see why some people hated it, even though I didn't quite agree with everything they said. But the more I think on it, and even after having watched it again, I can kind of see more and more why it's so polarized, like why people dislike it. And I've even started to fall more in that camp. I don't hate the movie. There's still parts of it that I enjoy, but at the same time, I watch it and I see what they're doing with like some of the characters and settings, and it feels like it cheapens what the original trilogy did. Like, just the victory that they had at the end of Return of the Jedi, it feels like doesn't really matter because they're in the same place that they were in at the beginning of the very first movie. You know, a small rebel alliance being nearly crushed by an enormous Imperial force, if you will. Force, get it? And then we have the spin-off movies. Now, I loved Rogue One. I actually think Rogue One is the best of all the new Star Wars movies. In Solo, I enjoyed, kind of, but at the same time, I feel like they're just trying to, like, copy Marvel. It's like, when there's a new Star Wars movie, like, every year, it takes away any sense of excitement or grandeur about it. It's like, back in the day, it was like, oh, there's a new Star Wars movie, because they only came around every so often. Whereas like now it's like, oh, another Star Wars movie. Whoopee. And the reason why Marvel, I think, can do that better is because, you know, it's sort of a continuous, ongoing sort of universe. It's sort of like a live-action comic book spread over the course of 2 hours, if you will, and like put on a screen. But like Star Wars, it's a saga. It's like, it's a clear sort of, you know, beginning, middle, and end. It's a chapter story. It's not so much like what Marvel does, where it's meant to be continuous. In at least that's not what it started out as. But it it's like it has story beats, like beginning, middle, and end, like in, you know, it has those specific focuses on specific characters and their specific journeys. Whereas, you know, Marvel's really just a smorgasbord of like a gazillions of characters, if you will. So Star Wars, I feel like, is starting to become a shell of its former self. And to some extent, Lucas kind of already did that with the prequel trilogy a lot. I'm not going to say that he didn't. And of course, there's like tons of merchandise and merchandise out. But like the thing is, you could ignore the merchandise and just focus on the movies as a singular entity and like appreciate those, because those really were something really special. But like now, it's like the movies themselves feel like the merchandise. It kind of saddens me to see that. And while I'll probably still at the very least see the last installment of the sequel trilogy, Episode 9, because it is, at least for now, the official ending to the Star Wars saga, you know, just like Episode 6 was, and we all know how that went. But I'll still see it, and I might see some of the spin-offs depending on my interest in them, but I don't have that like sense of childlike excitement and wonder for like new Star Wars related stuff the way I used to. And a lot of that is because I feel like Disney is in a lot of ways cheapening it. I mean, they're basically using nostalgia, not to the same extent as like some, but like they're sort of like giving us all these characters that we knew and loved as kids, and either totally botching them and killing them off, sometimes in the most anticlimactic of ways, or they're making like spin-offs about them with like different actors that we don't really relate, that we can't really, that even if they do a solid job, they don't really feel like the characters that we grew up with. Like Harrison Ford is Han Solo to me, like. And while the guy that played young Han Solo did an okay job, he's not really Han Solo to me. And I feel like just Disney's sort of like just milking every single thing dry with the movies. I mean, that's already been done ad nauseum with like the merchandise, like I said, but now to see the movies become that, it's a little bit sad. And yeah. There was a time, like, I feel like just when, like, we had just this original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, if you will, and it felt like, say what you will about the prequel trilogy, but it felt like a complete story, like, had chapters, you know, it had chapters 1 through 6, episode 1 through 6, if you will, and, you know, it had a definite ending at episode 6, you know, we defeated the Empire at last, blew up the second Death Star, and I mean, I know there's like the Star Wars Expanded Universe now Legends, but it felt like a complete story, and now it kind of ruins that to me, and it's sort of hard for me to like watch some of these newer sequel trilogy movies and not just sort of feel like everything that those characters like Luke and Han and Leia, Lando and 3PO and R2-D2 and Obi-Wan, everything that they did the course of those movies didn't have, it was almost meaningless. It just feels underwhelming to me now, unfortunately. And I really want to like try to just go back and watch those movies and like be able to just see them as like the official beginning, middle, and end of like the series. And yeah, this was yet another rambly video that I didn't script, but I just wanted to like speak from the heart. And yeah, I think Disney's going to keep making these movies. I'm sure we'll keep watching them, but I don't know. I think that Star Wars as we know it is not really what it once was. That's basically everything I had for this video. I know I was gonna do my review of Arkham City this month, but that's been pushed back probably at least until September, maybe even October. I am gonna do that review, I promise, but right now things are just crazy right now. But if you've been keeping up with my channel, thank you very much for doing so, and I'll see you guys and gals next time.